Golden Metal Resources is an AIM-listed precious and strategic metals exploration company which controls interests in 5 projects in Nevada. I'm delighted to be joined by the Chief Executive, Oliver Friesen. So, Oliver, it's difficult for executives to buy shares as they are permanent insiders, but a window in December opened, you purchased. Now, did you do it to keep up appearances, or is this the start of serious stake holding?
No, it's definitely not to keep up appearances. I could care less what people think of me. The reality is, the business is very active since we IPO'd back in May 10th. If you look back at our news flow, we're putting out news probably almost every week or 2 weeks here. So obviously, with that amount of news flow, I'm inside on quite often. Anytime I'm holding anything that's material that's not been disclosed to the market, I cannot purchase. So a small window opened up, and I emphasize a small window, so I took it. We've added a lot of value to the portfolio since we admitted, and I was able to scoop up some shares at close to the IPO price. So very happy about that purchase. And if further windows open up and the price is at a similar competitive level, I'll certainly look again to purchase more shares.
So that window opened. So I was wondering, does this mean there's a lull? Are we approaching a quiet period towards the end of the year?
I wouldn't say a lull. We're still full speed ahead in the background, especially in the US. The Christmas holidays are quite short, which is great because it allows us to continue to push things forward. So, naturally, there's a bit of a lull here as Christmas does come up here and people take a few days off, but things are still pressing on in the background. I can assure you of that. So, not a full lull. Things will slow down a little bit, but we'll still be active, and there'll be news coming out here as soon as we get some stuff ready here, which shouldn't be too long.
So you mentioned news flow. Yes, there has been quite a lot, including the recent assay results from Garfield revealing high-grade copper, silver, and gold mineralisation. What are you going to do with this intelligence?
Yeah, so that's what we're trying to figure out now. So we've employed Simon Griffiths, who's a very, very well-respected geochemist and geologist, formerly the chief geochemist at Barrick Gold. We work with him on the geochemical results that we obtained at Garfield, and he's actually the one that identified the porphyry and skarn system. So we're going to continue to work with him. He's a really, really intelligent geologist and has a lot of experience in Nevada. So we have those results in hand now. Obviously, they delivered some really, really exciting stuff. Particularly some very high copper grades over a large area and a big footprint. So we're excited about getting the next kind of steps ready here, and we'll announce what that is and get some more boots on the ground here shortly in the new year, I'm sure.
Okay, you say boots on the ground. That particular RNS was interesting to me because it used the term ground exploration. So how does this differ from other types of exploration? Because it sounds elementary, very rudimentary for a potential tier 1 copper deposit.
Yeah, so I guess it's just a term we use in the industry for us geologists. Maybe I don't think much about it, but the reality is it just breaks up between air and ground exploration. So if we're flying an airborne survey, we're obviously in the air. Ground exploration covers a vast a vast array of different types of exploration. But the reality is when we say ground exploration or boots on the ground, we have physical boots on the ground. So that includes geochemical surveying, prospecting, mapping, rock sampling, like we've done at Garfield. And then follow-up steps here could be geophysics. They could be trenching, drilling. So depending on if we're in the air or in the ground, that's what the terms that we'll use. But ground exploration can be a bit vague and a bit broad. So we'll try to include more details. That's exactly what we're doing when we are on the ground.
Okay, understood. Now, before I ask you what you're going to do next year, let's go back to this year. You listed in May on AIM, which has lost a lot of value over the past 2 years. This year alone, it's lost over 10%. So do you have any regrets?
No, I wouldn't say I do. I mean, the reality is when we were pushing this forward and talking to various brokers and bankers, there was actually a lot of pressure to bring this to Canada, Canada being a really great resource market. But ultimately, we said no to doing that. The reason is we think there's a huge opportunity here in the UK. There's very few high quality exploration development companies with really good management teams. There's quite a few in Canada. So I feel like if we keep this here, we can really create a name for ourselves and give UK investors a reason to reinvest and get excited about UK resource investing. So we're very happy with our decision. We have a great retail shareholder base. The share price has done Well, done well. We're close to the IPO price now, which I think comparatively is quite well considering the market. But we think there's a huge opportunity here. We're going to hopefully be the reason that UK investors' faith is restored in resource investing here, and that's our plan here in the UK.
It's good to hear you blowing your own trumpet about having a good quality management team. But let's name some names. So you've come to the market because that is the place to raise capital. And of course, it's a great marketing tool. But when one does raise capital, shareholders get very cross about dilution. So what's your strategy to make sure investors don't get cross?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is this industry, we are a capital intensive business. We do not generate cash flow. We raise money and we use it to explore and hopefully make discoveries and add a lot of shareholder value. So coming from the Canadian resource space, the views toward dilution and cap structure are actually much different than in the UK. You in the U in Canada, if you have 20, 30, 40 million shares out, that's what investors want to see. In the UK, it's a bit different. If you have 1, 2 billion shares out, that is okay. Investors like kind of the penny or the pence share. So we're kind of somewhere in the middle. I come from the Canadian, kind of school of resource investing and mining. So I like to keep the share structure a little bit tighter. We have about 85 million shares out right now, which is a nice position to be in. But how do we manage that going forward? One way we try to do that, and we're in a unique position in that we have a very strategic project in Pilot Mountain. The US government has a lot of money that's become available for domestic critical defense metal projects. So we think that we are in a very fortuitous position in that potentially we could receive US non-dilutive government funding. So if we can get that money, it would allow us to not have to go to the market to raise money to explore and develop Pilot Mountain. So that's a priority of the business. We put a lot of great people in place. We're really happy with the position that we're in and the chances that we have to receive some of those funds. So that's probably first and foremost how we're looking to minimize dilution. And then just beyond that, it's about being really thoughtful about when we explore how much money we spent, what the macro market is looking like. We don't want to raise money not on our terms. We want to be in a position of strength and power. We want to have great results to fall back on. We want to essentially raise money when it's conducive for us to do so. A lot of companies get themselves backed against the wall and they have to raise, and the brokers kind of take advantage of that, and you're doing placings at 20, 30% discount. We manage our cash balance and our bank accounts very, very closely. That allows us and gives us the runway to make sure that when we do raise, it's on our terms, which is to the benefit of our shareholders, of which we as a management team are shareholders as well. So non-dilutive government funding is probably the thing that we're most excited about and pushing forward, and hopefully we'll be successful in doing so. But just on top of that, just being really thoughtful about the market, where we're at, how much money we spend, and when we can find a good window to raise on our own terms.
So I said name names, and then I didn't name any names. I was thinking about one of your non-executive directors, Mr. Starzeski. I could see in his bio that he's got capital raising experience. So I wondered if you were going to tap into his network.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's the CMO of a Nasdaq listed company right now, a critical minerals development company. They were exploration like we are at Golden Metal. They're now in the process of actually going into development and mining. So he's been through that process in the US. That project is in California. So if he can manage the California legal hurdles and the Greenpeace people that live there and get that project into production, that's a huge feather in his cap. So now switching over to Nevada, much more friendly jurisdiction towards mining. He's got great connections in the U.S. With various institutions, high net worths, critical minerals funds. So absolutely, that's one of the reasons we brought him on, with his connections in the U.S. and also with the U.S. government. He's very well connected there as well. So we speak very regularly. Anytime he's in London, we certainly meet up. But he's been very influential so far joining, and we look forward to continue to working with him and tapping into his network as we push this forward.
It's very interesting that you mentioned that he deals with Greenpeace people. Do you anticipate that your company is going to have any attrition with environmentalists?
No, I went to the project quite recently. It's probably in one of the best spots you can imagine for a mining project. I've been to a lot of projects where there's a town nearby, or you're just in the wrong state. You drive through Nevada, and specifically in between kind of Vegas and Reno. People forget there's a part of Nevada that exists between there, but that's where most of our projects are. So it's great because you drive through this this main highway that connects the two major cities, and it's mining town after mining town after mining town, and you go sit there and eat at the local restaurant, and people notice you're from out of town because usually because of the way you talk or what you're driving. But they strike up a conversation, and ultimately they're really happy you're there. They want the jobs. They're rooting for you to make a discovery and ultimately to put what you're working on into production. So we don't anticipate any issues. On top of that, the previous company who owned Pilot Mountain did a baseline environmental survey, which identified no impediments. So the reason we chose Nevada, it's the best jurisdiction in the entire world for exploration and most importantly for development.
But are US-based investors rooting for you because they can now trade your shares with your presence on the mid-tier OTC equity market in this state? So what's the reception been like there?
Yeah, so one of the main reasons we actually got the OTC listing live was for the conversations we were having with the US government. There's a lot of sort of things that they look at in various applicants and different companies who have domestic projects. One of those is, can US investors invest? So that's one of the main reasons we pushed the OTC listing forward. But moreover, we think there's a huge opportunity to tap into the US investor base. Reason being, we are a Nevada, a U.S. focused company and project in Pilot Mountain. I was at Boca Raton, I guess it was late summer 2022, or sorry, this year, and we were meeting with various sort of very Republican, I would say, investors who were at that conference, and I was telling the story to them, and they were blown away. They didn't realize the essentially what tungsten is used for. They didn't realize the military applications. They didn't realize that the U.S. was so reliant on China. So, having those conversations with the U.S. investors, the reception was really, really positive, and they were looking for ways to get involved. So, obviously, being a UK focused company and a relatively new one at that, our focus is certainly on marketing and getting the story out here in the UK. But we're now shifting gears and shifting focus a little bit to find ways to really tap into the US investor base. So there's people that we're going to be working with or are working with to get that narrative out. US investors typically are very much long-term holders. They like to hold the shares and be involved with the story. So we're looking to definitely drive some volume there and get things going definitely in the new year as the story continues to unfold here.
Let me talk about partnerships. I want to know about the longevity behind the letter of an intent that you signed with Global Tungsten and Powders regarding a possible future offtake of Pilot Mountain's tungsten. Are they still keen? Do they want to be involved for the long term?
Yeah, absolutely. They're great partners to have. So Global Tungsten and Powders, they're the largest tungsten processing company in the entire US. So they were the perfect partners for us to have on this project. The reality is the Department of Defense, as of January 1st, 2026, has announced that for DoD procurement, they cannot take any concentrate from China, Russia, North Korea, or Iran. China being their largest import partner right now. So as you can imagine, people are scrambling in the US to say, we need to replace these Chinese and Russian concentrate imports. Where are we going to get them from? So that's when we put our hands up with the largest undeveloped tungsten project on US soil, say, hey, we can fill that void, we can fill that gap. So ultimately, it was a very mutually beneficial agreement. Whereas, if we can continue to push this project forward, which we believe we can, we have a fantastic partner who's willing to take that concentrate down the line here. So very, very mutually beneficial agreement. We're continuing to push things forward. And ultimately, the GTP has a very big influence in the tungsten sphere in the US across government, across industry. So great partners to have. We work quite closely with them. We're looking forward to pushing that agreement and that partnership forward.
So one of the final investor updates of 2023 is the relationship with Oxford Sigma Limited. It's a nuclear fusion technology company based in Oxford. So what do you both want from this relationship? What are you both hoping to achieve?
Yeah, so that the MOU that we signed with them was a bit of a unique one, and I think out of left field for a lot of investors and people who watch the story. But the reality is, we put in touch with Oxford Sigma and started talking about nuclear fusion, and ultimately, and most importantly, how tungsten is going to play into this very exciting burgeoning technology. And some of the numbers that were quoted to us in terms of the amount of tungsten that's going to be required for this industry blew me away, frankly. I mean, we're talking about one reactor potentially needing up to 5% of total tungsten that's consumed globally for all use cases. I mean, this would put the mother of all squeezes on the tungsten market. And the reality is, no one in this space is talking about it. A lot of money is being invested from the US government, from the French government, from the UK into this technology, but very few are actually looking at the supply chain implications. And the reality is, with those type of numbers, we don't have nearly enough tungsten in the ground right now in the entire world to fund or to fulfill the orders that this industry is going to eventually take. So that's why we partnered up, obviously owning a very strategic project in the US with a lot of contained tungsten, with a group who's acutely aware as to what these supply chain issues could look like. We wanted to partner up together to effectively start working on ways to bolster and support a Western world supply chain of tungsten, with the ultimate goal of that partnership is for tungsten into the nuclear fusion industry, which is obviously their main objective, being fusion experts. So they're very involved with a lot of nuclear fusion groups out of the US. We're looking to really bang the drum here, get this story out, and ultimately government, who are funding billions and billions of dollars into technology, to start to make it very clear to them that you need to also invest in the supply chains, because without the supply chain, this technology is going to go nowhere. And just another kind of data point for listeners, and one of the main criticisms I get when I talk about nuclear fusion is, okay, well, it's 10 years away, 15 years away. I don't know when that's going to be. They're making really positive strides almost monthly now from what I've seen. But the reality is, they're now building very large scale R&D reactors. France is now building one. The UK is about to fund one. The US is about to fund one. So the reality is, even if that technology is 10 years away from actual commercialization, there's R&D facilities now who are going to be placing orders as soon as 2025 for very large quantities of tungsten. So the issue is a lot closer than people think, which is why we're really looking to get that story out now and continue to work on that partnership with Oxford Sigma.
So finally, you and I were both attendees at the Resourcing Tomorrow conference, and I apologise for not introducing myself. I remember thinking, oh, that bloke looks like Oliver. However, that bloke's 6'7". You are indeed 6'7", so I'm very sorry for recognising your stature in so many ways. But Resourcing Tomorrow, I could sense an amazing energy there. The vibe was very different this year. I use that event as the litmus test for the sector going ahead into 2024. I think it's going to be a good year. What was it like from your point of view?
Yeah, no, I felt the same way, and I took away the exact same thing. And just another point, Sarah, and one that really stood out to me was the Fed speech yesterday, or quite recently here, when they really pivoted. I mean, they went from a very hawkish stance to becoming very dovish. And I all of a sudden checked the metals pricing app that I have on my phone, and gold was up 2.5%. And everyone's going crazy on Twitter about the fact that now everything's kind of shifted here, and the bull market is on. We've been looking for kind of that punctuated point to say, okay, the bear market's done here. We're now into this bull that we all know is coming. So that was a very, very exciting moment yesterday, and a lot of very well-respected people in the space essentially declaring that this is now the start of the bull market. So Resourcing Tomorrow, I think, was the start of that. People are getting excited and looking for ideas. But to have the Fed finally switch from being, hey, we're going to continue raising rates, to now we're going to lower rates, is a huge monumental point for this sector. And I think a lot of people now have a sigh of relief. And now it's about, hey, let's get invested, let's get exposed to what's going to be a fantastic opportunity in our space. So the event was fantastic. I'm sorry I didn't see you as well. Maybe from my height, I look over people sometimes. I apologize. But really great event, and I think the Fed yesterday really lit a fire here. So I'm pretty excited. I think a lot of people are too. So it's time to get invested. It's time to get working and continue to work towards what I think will be one of the most influential and important bull markets in our life.
Wonderful. What a way to end the year. Oliver Friesen, Chief Executive of Golden Metal Resources. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sarah. Let's talk again soon in the new year.